The crimson suns of Valeri's prime cast long shadows across the battlefield as Kessa crouched behind the twisted metal of a fallen transport. Her silver hair whipped in the acrid wind, and her violet eyes scanned the horizon for signs of human movement. The raid had gone wrong from the start. Kessa was no ordinary warrior. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with skin that shimmered like polished obsidian, she was the pride of the Valeri's hunting clans. Her people were born predators, with enhanced senses that could track prey across star systems and reflexes faster than most species could comprehend. For 3 generations, her family had led successful raids against the expanding human colonies, taking what they needed and leaving destruction in their wake. But today felt different. The humans had been ready for them. "Squad leader, we need to retreat," whispered Jorik, her second in command, his own dark skin marked with the ritual scars of their people. "The humans have surrounded our position." Kessa's fingers tightened around her plasma rifle. She had never retreated from a hunt. Her grandmother had told her stories of the old days when the Valerians were feared across the galaxy, when other species would flee at the mere mention of their name. Somehow these soft-skinned humans had managed to outmaneuver them. "No," she growled, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked her as royalty among her people. "We finish what we started." She leaped from cover, her powerful legs propelling her 30 feet in a single bound. The human soldiers scattered, but their movements were too coordinated, too precise. As she landed, she realized with growing horror that she had fallen directly into their trap. The energy net that enveloped her was unlike anything she had encountered before. Instead of the crude electromagnetic fields most species used, this felt almost alive, adapting to her struggles and somehow dampening her natural strength without causing pain. "Well, well," came a voice from behind her, the famous Kessa, the Silver Mane. She turned as much as the net allowed, her violet eyes blazing with fury. The human who approached was tall for his species, perhaps 6.5 feet. With dark hair and eyes the color of Earth's oceans, he wore the black uniform of a human fleet captain, but there was something in his bearing that spoke of more than military training. "I am Captain Devin Cross," he said, his voice carrying an accent she couldn't place. "And you, beautiful huntress, are coming with us." Kessa bared her teeth, revealing the pointed canines that had torn through countless enemies. "If you think I will beg for my life, human, you are mistaken. Kill me now, and be done with it." Devin smiled, and something in that expression made her stomach flutter in a way she didn't understand. "Kill you? Dear Kessa, that would be such a waste. We have far more interesting plans for you." The transport that carried her away from the battlefield was nothing like the crude prison ships she had expected. The interior was spacious and comfortable, with soft lighting that didn't hurt her sensitive eyes. She found herself secured in a chair that seemed designed specifically for her physiology, supporting her in ways that were almost pleasant. "Your people study us," she said to Devin, who sat across from her with infuriating calm. "We study everyone," he replied, offering her a crystal glass filled with liquid that sparkled like liquid starlight. "It's one of our greatest strengths. We're curious about everything." Kessa eyed the drink suspiciously. "Poison?" Devin laughed, a rich sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "If we wanted you dead, there would have been easier ways. This is nectar wine from the orchards of New Tuscany, but you might enjoy it." Against her better judgment, Kessa found herself intrigued. Her people rarely encountered alcohol that wasn't fermented from the bitter roots of their homeworld. She took a cautious sip and gasped. The liquid was like nothing she had ever tasted. Sweet and complex, with flavors that seemed to dance on her tongue. "You like it," Devin observed, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "It is adequate," she said, though she couldn't help taking another sip. The journey to wherever they were taking her lasted 3 days. Each day, Devin would visit her in her surprisingly comfortable quarters. The room was larger than her family's, dwelling back on Valeris, with a bed that molded itself to her body and a viewport that showed the stars streaming past, but it was Devin himself who proved to be the greatest mystery. He never interrogated her about military secrets or the location of Valeri's strongholds. Instead, he asked about her culture, her people's customs, their art and music. He brought her foods from a dozen different worlds, each more exotic than the last. "Why do you do this?" she asked on the second day, as he presented her with something called chocolate that made her entire body warm with pleasure. "Do what?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her with fluid grace. "Feed me, care for my comfort. I am your prisoner." Devon's expression grew serious. "You're not my prisoner, Kessa. You're my guest. There's a difference. Your guest." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Guests can leave whenever they choose. Can they?" Devon leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me, if I opened that door right now and offered you a ship back to Valeris, would you really want to go?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She wanted to say yes immediately, but the words stuck in her throat. The truth was, she was beginning to enjoy these conversations, these glimpses into a culture so different from her own. Devon spoke of human worlds where art and music flourished, where different species lived together in harmony rather than constant warfare. "I would return to my duty," she said finally. "Duty," Devon repeated softly. Such a cold word for someone with such fire in her eyes. He stood then, moving to the viewport. "Do you know what humans are really hungry for, Kessa?" She studied his profile against the stars. "Territory, resources, the same things all species desire," he said, turning back to face her. "We hunger for connection, for understanding, for beauty in all its forms." His gaze traveled over her face, her hair, the elegant lines of her neck and shoulders. "And you, my fierce huntress, are perhaps the most beautiful thing I have ever encountered." Kessa felt heat rise in her cheeks, a reaction that shocked her. Warriors of her people did not blush at compliments from enemies.
That said,
Something in Devon's voice, in the way he looked at her, made her feel things she had never experienced before. "You speak of beauty," she said, her voice rougher than usual. "Yet your people make war on mine." Devon moved closer, close enough that she could smell his scent, clean and warm with undertones of something uniquely human. War is what happens when people stop talking to each other, when they stop seeing each other as anything but enemies. "And what do you see when you look at me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Devon's hand reached out, hovering just inches from her face. "I see a woman who has been taught that strength means standing alone. I see someone who has never. It's been shown that there are other kinds of power." His fingers finally made contact, trailing along her cheek with feather-light touches. "I see someone who is hungry for things she doesn't even know she wants yet." Kessa's breath caught. Her people mated for reproduction and political alliance. Quick and efficient couplings that served their purposes. But the way Devon touched her, the way he looked at her, spoke of something entirely different. Something that made her skin sing and her heart race. "What are you doing to me?" she whispered. Devon's smile was soft, almost tender. "I'm showing you what it means to be consumed by something other than violence. What it means to be devoured by desire instead of duty." Before she could respond, he stepped back, his professional demeanor sliding back into place like a mask. "We'll be arriving at our destination tomorrow. I hope you'll keep an open mind about what you see there." As he left her alone with her thoughts, Kessa found herself touching her cheek where his fingers had been. She had come on this raid expecting to die in battle, as was proper for a warrior of her people. Instead, she found herself captured by something far more dangerous than any weapon. She was being seduced. And the most terrifying part was how much she was beginning to want it. The next morning brought their arrival at what Devon called Haven Station. Through her viewport, Kessa saw not the military fortress she had expected, but a sprawling city of crystalline light that seemed to float among the stars. Gardens bloomed in zero gravity, their flowers creating patterns of color that took her breath away. "Welcome to humanity's heart," Devon said as he entered her quarters one final time aboard the transport. "Are you ready to see what we're really hungry for?" Kessa stood, her warrior's pride warring with a curiosity she couldn't deny. "Lead the way, Captain Cross. Show me what kind of predator you really are." As they walked toward the docking bay, together, neither of them realized that this was only the beginning of a hunger that would consume them both. Haven Station was unlike anything Kessa had ever imagined. As Devon led her through the docking bay, She found herself surrounded by a symphony of sights, sounds, and scents that overwhelmed her enhanced senses. Beings from dozens of species moved through the corridors with easy familiarity, conversations creating a musical backdrop of different languages and tonal patterns. "This is impossible," Kessa breathed, watching a group of children from 3 different species playing together in a nearby garden pod. "How do you maintain order among so many different peoples?" Devon's hand found the small of her back, guiding her gently through the crowd. The touch sent electric currents through her skin, and she had to fight to keep her breathing steady. "We don't maintain order," he said, his voice low and warm near her ear. "We create harmony." No, they passed through a marketplace where vendors sold everything from crystallized starlight to fruits that changed color as they ripened. A Zephyrian merchant with gossamer wings offered Kessa a sample of something that tasted like liquid music, while a stocky Terran baker insisted she try his fusion pastries that somehow captured the essence of 3 different worlds. "You feed everyone," Kessa observed, accepting a pastry that dissolved on her tongue in waves of flavor. "Food is the universal language," Devon replied, his eyes dancing with amusement as he watched her reaction. "But it's not just about sustenance. About sharing experiences, creating memories together." As they walked, Kessa became aware of the way other beings looked at Devon. There was respect, certainly, but also something warmer, affection, even love. A young Altarian female with scales that shifted from blue to gold touched his arm as they passed, speaking in her melodic native tongue. "She's thanking you," Kessa said, her enhanced hearing picking up the emotional undertones. "For something you did for her family?" Devon's expression grew softer. "Her brother was injured in a mining accident. We were able to save him using techniques we learned from Valeri's medical texts." Kessa stopped walking. "Medical knowledge? We study everything," Devon said, turning to face her fully. "Every species we encounter teaches us something new. Your people's understanding of trauma healing is remarkable. We use that knowledge to create better warriors," Kessa said, confusion clear in her voice. "And we use it to save lives," Devon replied. "Same knowledge, different hunger." They continued through the station, and with each step, Kessa felt her understanding of humans shifting. This wasn't conquest as her people understood it. This was something far more complex and, in its own way, more complete. Devon's quarters were located in the upper levels of the station, with panoramic views of the starfield beyond. Space was elegant but comfortable, filled with art and artifacts from dozens of worlds. Kessa found herself drawn to a sculpture that seemed to be made of crystallized emotion, its surface shifting between colors that corresponded to different feelings. "It's beautiful," she said, reaching out to touch it. "It was a gift," Devon said, moving to stand behind her. "From the first empathic species we made contact with, they said it would help me understand what others feel." Kessa turned to find him very close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. "And what do you feel when you look at me?" Devon's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the high line of her cheekbone. "Fascination, desire, a hunger I've never felt before." "Hunger," Kessa repeated, the word coming out as barely more than a whisper. "You keep using that word." "Because it's the truth," Devon said, his other hand settling on her waist. "But not the kind of hunger you're thinking of. I don't want to consume you, Kessa. I want to savor you, to learn every secret your body holds, every sound you make when you're lost in pleasure." Kessa's breath hitched. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. Among her people, desire was a weakness to be controlled, channeled into battle fury or breeding necessity. But the way Devon looked at her, the way his voice dropped to that intimate register, made her feel like desire might be something else entirely. "I don't understand," she said, though her body was already responding to his nearness, her skin warming under his touch. "Then let me show you," Devon murmured, leaning in until his lips were almost touching hers. "Let me teach you what it means to be wanted for who you are, not what you can provide." When their lips met, Kessa felt something fundamental shift inside her. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, but as she responded, it deepened into something that made her knees weak. Devon's hands tangled in her hair, and she found herself pressing closer, craving more contact. "Beautiful," he whispered against her lips. "So beautiful and so strong." Kessa pulled back slightly, her violet eyes searching his face. "This is a trick? Some kind of human weapon?" Devon's smile was tender.
Ow.
"The only weapon here is honesty. I want you, Kessa. Not as a prize or a conquest, but as a partner, as someone to share experiences with." "I am a warrior," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "You are," he agreed, his hands moving to the fastenings of her armor. "But you're also a woman. When was the last time someone touched you like this? When was the last time you felt desire that wasn't duty?" Kessa couldn't answer because the truth was never. Her people mated quickly and efficiently, often without even removing their armor completely. But as Devon's skilled fingers found the hidden catches of her battle gear, she felt exposed in ways that had nothing to do with clothing. "Devon," she whispered, and the sound of his name on her lips seemed to ignite something in him. "Say it." "Again," he requested, his mouth finding the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. "Devon," she breathed, and was rewarded with a low sound of pleasure that vibrated against her skin. The next hours passed in a haze of sensation and discovery. Devon worshipped her body with a patience and skill that left her trembling, showing her pleasures she had never imagined. He mapped every inch of her skin with his hands and mouth, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch beneath him, what made her cry out his name. But more than the physical pleasure, it was the emotional intimacy that undid her. Devon looked into her eyes as he loved her, whispering words of admiration and desire that made her feel precious in ways she had never experienced. He praised her strength even as he showed her gentleness, celebrating her fierceness while teaching her surrender. "This is how humans consume," he said later as they lay entwined, her head on his chest. "We take you inside us, make you part of us, while we give ourselves in return." Kessa traced patterns on his chest, marveling at the differences between their species and the ways they seemed to fit together perfectly. "My people would call this weakness." "Your people are afraid," Devon said softly. "Afraid of connection? Of vulnerability." "But strength isn't about standing alone, Kessa. It's about choosing to trust someone else with your heart." "Is that what you're asking me to do?" she asked, looking up at him. Devon's expression grew serious. "I'm asking you to stay, to be part of this." He gestured toward the viewport, where Haven Station continued its slow rotation among the stars. "To help us build something new? And if I refuse, then I'll arrange safe passage back to Valeri's space," Devon said without hesitation. "No conditions, no tricks, but I hope you won't." Kessa was quiet for a long moment, processing everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she had been a warrior on a raid, focused only on duty and survival. Now she found herself in the arms of a human who had shown her kinds of pleasure and connection she had never dreamed possible. "You said humans are hungry for connection," she said finally. "We are. Then show me more," she said, rolling over to face him fully. "Show me what other hungers you have." Devon's smile was answer enough, and as he pulled her closer, Kessa realized that she was no longer the hunter. She had become the willing prey of something far more powerful than any weapon, the irresistible hunger of love. 3 months had passed since Kessa's arrival at Haven Station, and she had settled into a routine that would have been unthinkable in her previous life. She woke each morning in Devon's arms, shared breakfast with beings from a dozen different species, and spent her days learning about human culture and technology. But more than that, she had discovered parts of herself that had been buried under layers of warrior conditioning. She found she had a talent for xenobiology, helping Dr. Mira Stone in her research into cross-species compatibility. She discovered she enjoyed teaching, sharing Valeri's combat techniques with the station's security forces while learning their more defensive approaches. And she had learned to love. Devon had shown her patience beyond measure, introducing her 2 concepts of intimacy and partnership that her people had never explored. Their physical relationship had evolved into something that left her breathless, but it was the emotional connection that truly transformed her. She had never imagined that sharing thoughts and dreams could be as intimate as sharing bodies. Distracted this morning, Devon observed. As they lay in bed watching the sunrise over the station's agricultural domes, Kessa traced circles on his chest. A gesture that had become unconscious over the months. Received a message from home. Yesterday. Devon's body tensed slightly. What kind of message? General Torvin wants me to return, she said, not looking at him. He says the clan elders have decided to launch a final assault on human colonies. They want me to lead it. And what do you want? Devon asked, his voice carefully neutral. Kessa finally looked up at him, studying the face that had become more familiar to her than her own reflection. I want to stay here with you. But I also know what will happen if I don't return. Tell me. My people will attack anyway, she said. But without my knowledge of human tactics, without my influence on the War Council, they'll make it a massacre. On both sides, Devon sat up, pulling her with him, so they faced each other. There's a third option, which is, come with me to meet the Human Council. Help us find a way to make peace. Kessa shook her head. My people don't understand peace. They only understand strength. Then we show them strength, Devon said, his eyes bright with an idea. But not the kind they expect. 2 days later, Kessa found herself in the council chambers of Haven Station, facing a group of human leaders who looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Admiral Sarah Chen, the station commander, was a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Captain Cross tells us you have information about a planned Valerius assault, the Admiral said without preamble. I do, Kessa replied, standing straight despite the nervousness that churned in her stomach. General Torvin is gathering the full war fleet. He plans to strike at your colony worlds simultaneously. How many ships? Asked Colonel Martinez, the station's military commander. 300 of the line plus support vessels, Kessa said. Nearly the entire Valeri's navy. The humans exchanged glances. It was Admiral Chen who spoke first. That's enough firepower to glass a dozen worlds, at least Kessa confirmed. What do you suggest we do? Devon asked, though Kessa could see in his eyes that he already knew what she was going to propose. Go back, she said simply. I take command of the fleet and lead them into a trap. Absolutely not, Devon said, standing so quickly his chair fell over. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. It's not sacrifice, Kessa said, her voice gaining strength. It's choice. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I fight for. Admiral Chen leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? Kessa looked around the room, at the faces of beings who had become her friends, her family. I return to Valeri's space and take command of the fleet. I lead them to a system where your forces are waiting, but instead of battle, we stage a demonstration. Kind of demonstration, Colonel Martinez asked. Showed him what you showed me, Kessa said, looking directly at Devon. Show them that humans don't destroy what they conquer. Show them Haven Station. Devon's expression shifted from horror to understanding. You want to bring the entire Valeri's fleet here? Not here, Kessa said. To a neutral system. But with full documentation of what you've built here. Show them that different species can coexist. Show them that there's another way. And if they refuse to listen, Admiral Chen asked. Kessa's expression hardened. Then you'll have their entire fleet in one place, and you can do what you have to do. The debate that followed lasted hours. Military advisors argued about the risks of allowing an enemy fleet so close to human space. Diplomats worried about the precedent of negotiating with what was essentially a terrorist organization. But in the end, it was Devon who made the deciding argument. She's right, he said, his hand finding Kessa's across the table. We can't build a peaceful galaxy by destroying everyone who disagrees with us. If we're going to be the species that brings unity to the stars, we have to be willing to take risks for it. Admiral Chen looked between them, her expression unreadable. Very well. But if this goes wrong, Captain Cross, it's on your head. Understood, Devon replied without hesitation. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Kessa worked with human strategists to plan the encounter, while Devon coordinated with the diplomatic corps to prepare presentations that would showcase humanity's vision for the future, but it was their private moments that Kessa treasured most. Devon made love to her with a desperate intensity, as if trying to memorize every touch, every sound. They talked through the night, sharing memories and dreams, making plans for a future that might never come to pass. Promise me something, Devon said on their last night together. What? Kessa asked, curled against his side. Promise me that if things go wrong, you'll come back to me. Not to the Valerias, not to duty, but to me. Kessa lifted her head to look at him. Devon, promise me, he repeated, his voice rough with emotion. Promise me that whatever happens, you'll remember that you have a choice, that you have somewhere to belong. I promise, she whispered, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of tears and hope. The journey back to Valeria's space felt like traveling backward through time. With each jump, Kessa felt the weight of her old life settling back onto her shoulders. By the time she reached the rendezvous point, she had to work to remember the woman she had been at Haven Station. General Torvin was waiting for her aboard the flagship, his scarred face set in familiar lines of disapproval. You returned to us changed, he said without preamble. I returned to us informed, Kessa replied, falling back into the formal speech patterns of her people. I have learned much about human capabilities. Have you? Torvin's eyes narrowed. Or, have you been seduced by their softness? Judge for yourself, Kessa said, activating the holographic display she had prepared. I propose we demonstrate our strength by allowing them to surrender with honor. The presentation that followed was carefully crafted, showing human technology and defenses in a way that made them seem formidable, but not insurmountable. Kessa played the part of the cunning warrior who had infiltrated enemy territory and discovered their weaknesses. But as she spoke, she found herself thinking of Devon's words about different kinds of strength, like the greatest strength she had ever shown was not in battle, but in choosing love over duty, connection over conquest. You propose we spare them? Torvin asked when she finished. I propose we demonstrate that the Valerias are strong enough to be merciful, Kessa said. Let them see our full fleet. Let them understand their position, and then offer them terms. And if they refuse, then we do what we came to do, Kessa said, hating the words even as she spoke them. The meeting in the Kepler system took place. 3 days later, Kessa watched from the bridge of the flagship as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Dramatically outnumbered but holding perfect formation, at their head was a sleek cruiser that she recognized as Devon's ship. They're opening a channel, reported the communications officer. On screen, Torvin commanded. Devon's face appeared on the view screen, and Kessa had to grip the armrest of her chair to keep from crying out. He looked tired, older than when she had left him, but his eyes were still the same ocean blue that had captivated her. General Torvin Devon said formally, I am Captain Devon Cross, speaking for the United Human Colonial Authority. We're here to discuss terms. Terms? Torvin laughed harshly. You are outnumbered 10 to 1. Terms could you possibly offer? Not what we offer you, Devon said, his gaze finding Kessa's across the light years. What we offer her. Suddenly, the view screen changed, showing not Devon's bridge, but a familiar sight that made Kessa's heart stop. Haven Station rotated slowly in space, its gardens and galleries and markets alive with the movement of dozens of species living in harmony. This is what we've built, Devon's voice continued. This is what we're offering to share. It's not conquest, but partnership. Not domination, but cooperation. Torvin turned to Kessa, his expression murderous. He told them we were coming. I told them we were all coming, Kessa said, standing to face him. All of us, together. Traitor Torvin snarled, reaching for his weapon. No, Kessa said, catching his wrists with reflexes honed by months of training with human martial artists. Revolutionary. The fight that followed was brief but decisive. Torvin was a skilled warrior, but Kessa had learned new techniques, new ways of thinking about combat. More importantly, she was fighting for something she believed in rather than simply following orders. When it was over, Torvin lay unconscious on the deck, and Kessa stood before the assembled bridge crew with her chin raised defiantly. I am Kessa of the Silver Mane, she announced. You're the last daughter of the royal bloodline? And I claim command of this fleet by right of combat. The bridge fell silent. Then, slowly, the crew began to kneel, acknowledging her authority. Open a channel to the human fleet, she commanded. Devon's face reappeared on screen, and this time, his expression was full of hope and love and pride. "Captain Cross," Kessa said formally, "I am prepared to discuss terms." "What kind of terms?" Devon asked, playing his part in the diplomatic dance. "Unconditional surrender," Kessa said, and watched. Devon's eyes widened in shock. Then she smiled, the expression transforming her face. "Ours to yours. We surrender to the possibility of peace. We surrender to the hunger for something better than endless war." "And what do you want in return?" Devon asked, his voice soft with emotion. "Safe passage to Haven Station," Kessa said. "For any of my people who choose to come, and ... She paused, suddenly feeling vulnerable despite her position of command. "And a place for me at your side if you'll have me." Devon's smile was brighter than the stars around them. "Always," he said, "for as long as you want it." 6 months later, Kessa stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching as the first group of Valeri's refugees arrived. Some would choose to stay, learning to live in peace with other species. Others would eventually return to their homeworld, carrying with them new ideas about what strength could mean. Devon's arms came around her from behind. She leaned back against his chest, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "Any regrets?" he asked, his voice warm against her ear. "Only one," Kessa said, turning in his arms to face him, "which is that it took me so long to realize that being consumed by love is the most powerful hunger of all." Devon's kiss was her answer, and as they stood together among the stars, Kessa understood at last what humans truly hungered for. Not territory or resources or dominance, but connection. The kind of deep, transformative bond that made two beings into something greater than the sum of their parts. She had expected the humans to devour her people through conquest. Instead, they had consumed her through love, and she had never been more grateful to be prey. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. But Kessa had found her home in the arms of a human who had taught her that the greatest strength was not in standing alone, but in choosing to belong. And as the stars wheeled overhead, she knew that this was only the beginning of their story together. The end.